When you're starting out with music production, using a compressor can be one of the most challenging things because I think it is really hard to understand in the beginning what a compressor actually does. And I wish that someone taught me these things that I'm about to tell you right now. The goal of this video today is to really shine light on this topic and to show you inside of Ableton Live how the compressor works. And for that, I will use the compressor of Ableton Live. I will work on my song, which is called Forever Grateful. I made this song together with Gabriel, and he played the cello on this song. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to just show you how this actually sounds like, this cello recording. So let's do that right now. As you can see already in the waveform, and maybe you also heard it, there are some parts that are a little bit more quiet and some parts that are a lot more loud. And my goal now is to control this a little bit, to make these very loud parts a little bit less loud, because I just want to have it a bit more evened out, right? And what you could do is to really just go in and cut out these very loud parts and just reduce the volume of them. And then you can do a crossfade here on the edges, so it sounds a bit smoother. And I think this step is also really fine, and you can also work like this. I work like this a lot on different things, also when I work with vocals, for example. And the compressor is just a much easier way to do this exact thing basically on the whole track automatically. So let me just show you how the compressor actually works. Let's drag and drop the compressor by Ableton on my cello recording. And now on my compressor, I see these different settings, and you can actually also change the view down here with these 3 different tabs. I personally really like to work in this tab right here, but this one is also really nice because here, when you now play the cello, you can also see the waveform appearing here, right? So the most important parameter, in my opinion, on a compressor is the threshold. And the threshold is located right here on this compressor. If you change the view, it is up here. So what does the threshold actually do? The threshold basically tells the compressor from which threshold, so from which amount of dBs, basically, the compressor should start impacting the signal. Right now we have it set at 0 dB, and the signal is never crossing 0 dB inside of Ableton right now. We see the signal right here. So if I want the compressor to even start working, I have to lower the threshold a little bit. And when I do that right now, I can also see the value right here. It's already working a little bit because every time now that the signal of the cello crosses this minus 10 dB threshold, this compressor actually starts working and starts to reduce the signal a little bit. And you can also see that on here with the gain reduction. And down here you also see the value. You see that every time the threshold gets crossed, now we see here a value of -6. That means the compressor now basically reduces the whole signal by -6 dBs every time that it crosses this threshold. Now the second most important parameter on a compressor is the ratio. The ratio is located right here on this knob right here, and right now I have it set at 4:1. And what the ratio says is basically the amount of the compression which will go on. Let's say you have a signal that is 10 dBs above the threshold. You just divide it by 4. That means that after the compression, my signal will only go 2.5 dBs above the threshold. But that's just a very easy and simple mathematical explanation of the ratio. But basically what it means is just the bigger the ratio, the more compression you have going on. Now the next parameter that I want to explain you is the knee, which is down here. And if I move it up and down, you can also see these gray bars right here on the side move. And what the knee actually does is it will gradually increase the compression. So if my threshold gets crossed and I have my knee at 0, that means everything that's above my threshold will just get reduced by this amount right here. But if I now increase the knee a little bit by, let's say, 6 dBs, my compression already starts 3 dBs below my threshold and will reach its maximum at 3 dBs after my threshold. So you have a more subtle compression and not that hard compressing, right? So it's just a little bit more natural also. Now, there are actually also two more parameters that are quite important on a compressor, but that are a bit more difficult to hear as well. So that would be the attack and the release. So the attack will tell you that as soon as my signal goes above the threshold, how long it will take until the compressor starts working. Right now it is set at 1 millisecond, and we can increase it up to 1 second. So 1 second would mean that when my signal crosses a threshold, it will take 1 second until my compressor starts working. That's really slow. So normal attack times will be around 1 and maybe 20 milliseconds or even longer, but it really depends also on the instrument and on the effect that you want to achieve with this. So the release will say how long it will take as soon as my signal goes below the threshold again, how long it will take until the compressor does not compress my signal anymore. And right now it is set at 30 milliseconds, and you can actually dial it down until 1 millisecond and up to 3 seconds. And 3 seconds would be really long, because that means that my compressor almost never recovers. Especially when you're starting out, I think the release will be one of the most difficult things to hear. Also for me, I have to admit that on some instruments it's really hard to really hear the release, but I would just try it out and really go very heavily also with the threshold down. So let's say here on this cello, and then try to dial the attack. And you can hear it a bit better if you have these extreme settings. So really setting the threshold very low and have a high ratio, maybe infinity is a lot, but maybe 6 or 8. And now you can hear the attack definitely better compared to when you have very little bit of compression going on. So the more compression is going on, the better you can hear the attack and the release. So I would always just go extremely with the threshold down and also with the ratio up, then set my attack and release, and then dial everything back. So now this sounds around good for me, but it also always depends in which context you put this instrument. And I would never copy just settings from one instrument to another, because it always changes also depending on the context of the instrument. And yeah, it's really hard to give recommendations for any of these settings for any kind of instrument. It really depends also what you want to achieve with it, right? Now, what's also really cool about compression is that now you can actually also increase the volume of this track without it being distorted or anything. So let's just see how that looks like. So without the compression, when I change the view here to my mixer, and when I play it now, I will see that it peaks at minus 12 dBs. And as soon as I turn on the compressor, it goes only to minus 18. So you can just increase the signal by 6 dBs. Let's just group them together. And now I can, let's turn off the whole thing again. So minus 12, and now let's turn it on. It still peaks at minus 12, but it just sounds much louder, because now the quiet parts that are below my threshold, they were elevated by 6 dBs, which is quite a lot, and everything that goes above my threshold just gets compressed. So now you can really boost the volume of a signal without it being distorted or anything. Now the next thing that I want to talk about is sidechaining. Now sidechaining is right here. If you open up this little arrow right here, you will see these two tabs basically. Here you can turn on and off sidechaining from an external source. So for example, when I want to have something else triggering my compressor, I can set this right here. So maybe on a cello this doesn't sound that nice, but you will definitely also hear the effect. So up here I have a kick drum that sounds like this. And what I want to do now is every time that my kick drum hits, my cello should get reduced a little bit. So it gives this pumping effect. Let's just see how it sounds like. So if I turn on sidechain right here, I can choose different tracks that I want to use as my sidechain signal. So now I can just choose my kick drum right here. And now the compressor doesn't react on my signal of the cello anymore, but it will actually react on the signal of the kick drum. So basically every time the kick drum now hits, my compressor starts working. Now this is really extreme, right? This is really this pumping effect. And maybe on a cello it doesn't sound that good, but if you only do it very little like this can also really help for different elements to cut through better in the mix. So for example, if your kick drum just doesn't really have enough punch in your track, but you don't want to increase the volume of the kick drum, you can just do this sidechain compression on your track that you want to like reduce a little bit. Now what's actually also really nice about sidechaining is that you can also turn off the sidechain, but when you have this opened right here, you will still see this EQ section right here. And if you want to compress a whole drum, like this up here for example, and when I now dial down the threshold, my compressor only reacts to the kick drum basically, because the kick drum is mostly the most dominant thing and also the thing that has the most energy on a drum. So now the compressor every time just ducks when a kick drum hits, but I don't want that. I want to have it like be a little bit less harsh and a little bit more subtle, and also affect the high frequencies of the drum and not only the kick drum. So now I can go back here in the sidechain area but only use the EQ, and here I will now tell the compressor, please only react to frequencies above 400 Hertz, for example. So yeah, this is the most basic explanation of the compressor I could do. I hope that you could take away something from this video. If I missed something out, or if you have any question, or also if you think something is working different than what I told you, please let me know in the comments below and we can figure it out together, because I'm also learning every time something new when I explain something, and I'm open to feedback. I'm open for new techniques, and I'm just really happy to share what I have learned over the years and what I wish that someone told me when I started out. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your time. I hope that you liked this video. Please subscribe for more like this in the future. See you on the next one. Thanks for watching.